the amount of energy and improvements we're making in technology, for example, if we just channeled a little bit of that into school system, which is literally what's shaping the future.
What is going on, guys? My name is August.
And I'm Euless.
And welcome to Ask Why Podcast.
Welcome to episode 3. Today we're going to be talking about Today we're going to be talking about the school system.
Yeah, we're going to talk about how the school system is outdated, how it's very old-fashioned in the way they teach kids and the values that were instaured when it was made to begin with. We are very privileged to have had an education the way we did. And there are some kids out there that are more worried about if they're going to get a meal or not. Yeah. So we're not trying to discourage anyone from learning advanced courses or traditional lessons. We simply want to point out several ways that the American school system could be improved and, basically how it could be more valuable and fitting to fit the way our society is developed.
To get a better understanding of why the school system is outdated nowadays and the couple things that don't feel like they are appropriate for today's age in school. I think getting a little background of why school was created and who created it would be a good segue into this.
Yeah, so the public education system was founded by a man called Horace Mann.
What's his name?
Horace Mann, yeah.
Okay, interesting.
He was born in 1796. And in 1838, he founded the Common School Journal, which is his conclusions of how schools needed to be improved.
So schools were already a thing at the time, though?
Yeah, schools were already a thing, but they were private. Some were segregated, some were religious. There was kind of all over the place. Mm-hmm. So this kind of defined the public education system. His ideas were that, 1, the public should no longer remain ignorant. 2, that education should be paid for, controlled, and sustained by an interested public. 3, that this education will be best provided in schools that embrace children from a variety of backgrounds. 4, that this education must be non-sectarian, meaning no affiliation with religious groups. Okay. 5, that this education must be taught using the tenets of a free society. And 6, that education should be provided by well-trained professional teachers. So this came out in 1838.
Yeah.
And
so far, these feel like pretty appropriate things to
These don't
reform.
Feel that crazy for 19th centuries. And this was actually drafted before even the 30 Basic Human Rights were even made in 1848.
So a long time ago.
Yeah, a long time ago. This guy was on the right track. He was well fitted to do what he was doing. But yeah, at the same time, he made this in 1838, and it's still somewhat what is being followed today.
Yeah.
So that goes to show how it also was primarily designed to instill discipline and not form learning for kids. It was we know that schools back in the day were made to make factory workers and not a diverse population of kids.
Yeah, so, it was based around the industrial age where people were literally being trained to work in factories and were taught to just follow the schedule, and was their life, was just following orders.
Yeah, the way that it was formed, you had to be on time, you had to follow instructions, stay organized, and at the end of the day, you were rewarded for doing exactly what you were being told. So, yeah, it wasn't the, I'd say, like, comforting environment that we expect our kids to have nowadays.
Well, yeah, that point you just made, just being on time and just following what you're told, is still the same values that are in place today for the school system.
Yeah, exactly. It's not very different from now.
Okay, so that's one thing. What else?
Well, now you have what seems to be like a lack of autonomy in school, I'd say. Like you're always constantly being told what to do, and they don't really enforce. Like back in the day, you had kids who were encouraged to like stick with the herd and always be like predictable and reliable workers. And nowadays, you still have that emphasis in school, you feel like, but the primary motivation should be a little more towards sticking out and being different and thinking creatively and
it's funny because the school system itself doesn't push those ideas and values, but then to get into a top college or to get into the next school, you need to be unique and creative and show that off, even though school doesn't teach you to do that. But
Yeah.
that's what they're looking for at the end.
Yeah, exactly. It feels like school is, it's teaching you some of the right things, but they're so outdated and so many things are being missed out on. For instance, like I'm sure everybody would take like a free tax class in school, or
Yeah.
or a first aid class, or like
Yeah, that's a good point too.
there's a lot of neglected things that we could come to use.
I didn't even think about taxes, for example, but that's something that would be more appropriate and something more interesting in school other than.
I would have taken that class.
Yeah, I would have. How to.
Willingly, yeah. But yeah, that just goes to show a little more about how schools are outdated and there's some things that are missing that kids would be very well suited for nowadays.
Yeah, because the point is that back then people went to school in order to get a job after that required that degree from school, but nowadays there's a lot of famous people and people that are successful and talented that have created a good life and have dropped out of school and created their own way.
I was gonna say I have a lot of respect for those people that made it out of the uniformal, like go to college, get your job, get a stable job. If not, you're a failure. The people that 10 years ago became YouTubers, 20 years ago became comedians, musicians, like I have a lot more respect for those people because they made it through that difficult society. And I think they could also agree that they wish it was easier.
The current system makes you feel like that's the only way is to go to school, get an education, go to college, and then to get that job you're working your whole life to get, pretty much. But what's not appropriate is that in today's world, there's so many different ways to have a successful life and be talented.
It's doing the right job and like telling kids to perform well, be successful, but they're not giving them enough exploration to figure out what way to do that.
Yeah.
Like they need to be more explorative. I don't know if that's a word. More like allow more freedom for kids to discover things that they can't discover.
The structure is important, but it needs a little bit more freedom for students to be able to explore who they are and know what they really want to do instead of forcing them like what to think. It needs to be pushed more on how to think and what you want to do.
Once you get out of school and you switch into that real life mode and you have a job, your boss is going to reward you for thinking creatively, thinking of new ideas outside the box, and just overall change the way that people perceive the product, whatever it may be, whatever the job is. But when you think about like ad campaigns, musicians, entrepreneurs, you have so many jobs that require creativity, and creativity is kind of being suppressed in school systems nowadays.
Yeah, and at the end of the day, if you want to become a musician, what do you really learn in school that's valuable information that you're going to learn other than the overall structure of getting out of bed and going to school every day? That's the right thing to promote, is just having structure in your life. But other than that, to get to the point where you're a musician, all the information you learn in school is useless.
Most of which, yeah.
So it makes the school system nowadays inappropriate for all those people that don't want to just get a factory job after.
I wouldn't necessarily say like inappropriate, but I'd say it's like if you want to be a musician, for instance, it's a waste of time. Like, you don't need to be pursuing, like, you can obviously pursue advanced courses in music and then be more talented than other musicians, but for some people it's you could also easily drop out and work it your own way and not take that, like, you don't need that leverage, you don't need that degree to show that you're a
but it's
person
interesting
that
that society puts that pressure on you to need, for some reason everyone always says you need that as a backup, when what is that backup? It's just learning a bunch of information that in 2 weeks you forget. Most of the time you're not interested in, and it is useless information. I don't think that's a good reason for having a backup, but you still feel that pressure nowadays in society that you need to go to school. You don't even think why. It's just
the the important thing though is like we're not encouraging people to drop out and saying like, oh yeah,
Absolutely
you're
not.
completely good to drop out and you can be anything you want to be.
We're just
It's
questioning the nature of why we are pressured to go to school
yeah,
if we're not making anything out of it.
that degree can be valuable, and it used to be almost. It was.
And it can still be valuable
It
nowadays.
should be, yeah. It's we're talking about how it's ineffective right now and how it should be effective, not how school is outdated and we need to abolish school. They're two different arguments there.
Yeah. Well, personally, why I felt so disconnected with school is because of the whole nature of it. Everything is always you're learning for a test, which is information that you're going to remember for 2 weeks just to take that test. After you take that test, it's proven from research that you don't remember anything unless it's a subject where you feel actually interested in and you're going to use that in your day-to-day life, which you will remember. All the rest you literally forget in 2 weeks. So
it's an authentic learning. It's fake. It's just satisfying the little tick on the box, making sure that you know this for that time, and then
but now that we
on.
went through that system, I feel like we need to do better for a future generation to just question the system a little bit and see why things are made in a way. And if it's not appropriate to change it, it might be hard and it might take some time, but at least to start the movement in the right direction.
Yeah. Well, when you look at pictures, I think we'll put two pictures side by side.
Here's a car from 150 years ago, and here's a car from today.
And here's a school from 100 years ago and a school from today.
And it's still the same thing compared to literally everything else in your life changing, like your fashion, like clothing, everything changes.
Technology, yeah, everything has developed, and the only thing that has kind of stagnated was school. So,
and part of it is lectures. We're taught in lectures, which is just listening to teachers for hours on end, which is not
notes.
stimulating. Yeah. That's old school. You don't need to have a chalkboard and have your teacher explain the lesson on a chalkboard. We have like resources like Khan Academy and endless things, classes on YouTube, which are much more entertaining to students. So why not utilize those resources in modern society? Why are we not able to pull out your calculator on your phone or do a quick Google search when we've seen as a society that it's not going anywhere, and it's not like in 2 years our phones are going to be gone. It's not going anywhere. So why are we still rejecting those resources that would change school system?
Yeah, that's very true. You in the real world, your job, you'll definitely have that availability too. So why limit kids to only learning in the other way?
Yeah, it's always like, oh, but what if you didn't have your phone right now to look that up or whatever?
Yeah.
Like,
well, school overall is just it's an emphasis on memorization over divergent thinking. You have formulas to memorize, a bunch of different history names, dates, events
that you learn by heart for no reason.
Heart just for the test, and you're not getting any like I don't know if some of you have probably taken IQ tests. When you take those tests, you feel challenged. Like it's more like you have to think creatively to solve that solution, and those IQ tests are a lot more representative of like how
it challenges you in a positive way.
Yeah, how it challenges you and how your intelligence works, and to the fact that you have that being such a minimal part of school, like tests like that compared to just, oh, what happened in 1906, what happened in overall, the school just prioritizes academic intelligence over emotional intelligence,
which is dangerous, because what if you're that kid that I felt like I was too, that you don't perform well in those memorization or things that you're tested on? Then you feel, if you don't think about it, you blindly or not on purpose, you compare yourself to other people, and then you're like, I didn't get a good grade in this class compared to this other person, and you think you're less intelligent for that when you're being tested on remembering dates and things like that, which is not an appropriate way to see your intelligence. Or
you just have an inefficient way of teaching kids that are so diverse and polar and have different learning styles and a bunch of different means of accumulating information. It's hard to standardize the way that you assess them, like especially off intelligence, because it's not even, there's so many different types of intelligence.
Well, that's why maybe we shouldn't, like, we should assess in a way, I'm not sure, but putting a test only results in people comparing themselves, which isn't a positive thing in school. There's no point to compare your grades with your friends and whatnot. I
think you're right. Like, it is very competitive, and that's not necessarily healthy for kids. But at the same time, competition is an important factor of real life
You're
in
right.
terms of like other jobs and being able to truly have drive to like outdo others and compete and being
But
the best at what you do.
don't you think that competition can be introduced in a way that's not in grades, for example, like doing random activity or just playing a
Yeah.
soccer game? It teaches you competition, but without you feeling.
I mean, I don't know the exact way of doing it. I
No,
haven't
we're
thought
not
about
the
it.
ones.
Yeah,
Once
yeah,
again, we're
yeah.
not going to be the ones solving the problem. But I think
But
there's.
yeah, I'm sure there is better ways than just like meat quality, you know.
Yeah, I think
So,
definitely.
um,
And some way that's more appropriate that either actually tests intelligence or just a way that doesn't put other students down just because they don't meet the requirements that are being tested.
yeah,
That's
yeah,
not fair to other students, and it just sets them up poorly to think less of themselves.
yeah. I think it needs to be more considerate of all the different kids that are out there and the different ways that they learn.
There's one quote that I read about an article about the school system, and it said, if you judge a fish by its ability to climb a tree, it will live its whole life believing that it is stupid. So
You just farted in the middle of the quote.
I read a quote about school system that I felt like applied very well to those students. And it said, if you judge a fish by its ability to climb a tree, it will live its whole life believing that it is stupid.
That's fair.
So that's those students that aren't able to perform well on the ACT or whatever standardized test is in school, then it's not fair to them compared to other students. And it is random, since we've shown doesn't have anything to do with intelligence. It's not a good way to test people.
Yeah, overall I think like we can definitely agree that the school system's outdated and there's
Needs
definitely
reform.
there's definitely some things that need to change. I don't know how quick that will be, but I sure hope that it will be a little rushed, because personally I feel like there's definitely some things that are way too outdated.
Well, as a
to be
parallel,
fitting.
the amount of energy and improvements we're making in technology, for example, if we just channeled a little bit of that into school system, which is literally what's shaping the future, then I think we could see a very good reform, not a perfect reform, but something more appropriate for diversity of students.
Yeah, I want to finish off with this quote from Eddie Zong, and he said, "No one has ever changed the world by doing what the world has told them to do." I think that's a great way to wrap up everything.
Round up on that.
Yeah,
that is a good quote. And yeah, let us know what you guys think about the school system, and if you agree it needs reform, or what your ideas are for that solution. What can we do to make it more appropriate for a diversity of students and that have different directions they're going in life compared to nowadays and different things that are in place.
Yeah, overall, if you guys enjoyed this episode, make sure to let us know. Make sure to check us out on Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, Spotify, whatever you're on.
We'll catch you guys next week. Thank you for tuning in. Hope you guys
Monday.
enjoyed.
Peace.
Peace out.